All right, good morning. We appreciate you joining us. My name is Karwacki. We're going to chat with you about some cool tech that we're bringing together through the Supply Chain of the Future initiative. I'm joined by these gentlemen. We'll let them introduce themselves in just a little bit. So would you like to go ahead and start us off with an introduction, Dave?
Sure. Real happy to be here. I'm Dave Giannini from Appeal Sciences. I'm a software engineer, data scientist. I come from the telecommunications space, where I process 1 billion phone calls a day and manage those data sets. And now I'm applying that to each piece of produce that goes through the supply chain.
Thank you, Dave. Carl McDermott, I'm the Chief SaaS Officer at DeltaTrack. My background is in enterprise software, spent 10 years in strategy innovation and the last 15 in supply chain. I founded a SaaS startup for TMS, then went to join a Toronto-based blockchain company and finally landed at DeltaTrack. A little bit about me, I'm a Brit. When we started off looking at produce, you might remember a small tennis competition called Wimbledon. We used to get strawberries in that 2-week period in the UK. Fast forward 40 years and now we have strawberries at this show, every single week of the year. A little bit about more background to me. I've been living in Mexico for quite a while now, so we talk in Mexico the green gold, the avocados. In technology, we talk about data as the digital gold. And I think one of the problems we have is we have lots of data, but we don't really collaborate. It's really in silos. And I think what we're trying to do here is break that down.
David Karwacki. I'm a Canadian kid. I was a basketball player in university and I studied finance and economics, and I really wanted to go trade commodities on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. But I liked this girl a lot more than I liked orange juice futures and pork bellies. So I married her, I have 4 kids and 7 grandchildren, and I created a company 35 years ago called Star Produce. I'm the founder and was the CEO. I retired in March and then started a new technology venture called BloomIQ.
Well, that's a perfect segue into BloomIQ, right? I mean, I could have done it better myself, David. What is BloomIQ?
So Bloom, we're trying to bring clarity to the fresh produce market. You have all of these different folks on the supply side that are all over the world. Supply is very local and production curves are very local. And then on the other side, you have all this demand that is around that you see out on this show floor, and never the two shall meet. And so we are trying to provide a macro market solution, AI-driven platform that brings the two together, that coordinates it, that provides more data for folks. We are agnostic. We're not trying to create a marketplace. We're trying to give people better information for better decision making so that they can make the right decisions, or at least use the data and the actionable intelligence that we're providing for them in their own decision making wherever they're at in the supply chain.
That's really cool. And when we were talking earlier, you were saying that you're not just about having to rebuild things, but rather connect to existing data sources and things that already exist to bring that clarity to the chaos. So.
Drew, you're exactly right. There is a lot of data that's out there, but is the data actually organized? Is it actually disciplined? And how can we provide it to the marketplace so that it's usable, that it actually brings intelligent solutions that people can take action on? And that's really our raison d'etre, if you will, is to be the Bloomberg terminal for fresh produce ultimately, so that people can tap into that, get their information, and connect in folks like I'm sitting on the stage and we're going to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, David. So interesting, similar but different perspectives, right? You're all doing very similar things. We're looking at freshness, we're looking at optimizing data, using these data to create insights to make better decisions throughout that supply chain. That's the cool things that we're trying to get to, but there's some challenges along the way, right? There's still some gaps, and maybe your solutions are helping to fill some of those gaps. Maybe those gaps also still exist. So I'd be curious to hear, just from your point of view, each a little different perspective, what do you think the main challenges or gaps are in the supply chain today?
Well, from my perspective, I have a couple of granddaughters. They're about 2 years old, identical twins. They're just beautiful. And every day they have a clamshell of berries. They eat a clamshell of berries a day. And if those berries are bad, they won't touch that berry for another 2 weeks. There's no chance. If they're soft or if they're sour, they'll go to something else and eat something else. And I think that is a real challenge in the supply chain, is to continue to provide that great quality, that great taste for consumers, so that they can count on it. And our observation at BloomIQ is we just do the same thing every year in fresh produce. We end up planting the same things, trying to do it at the same times. Retailers advertise at the same time. They end up doing the same thing because that's what they did the year before. And there's no adjustment that the crop was 3 weeks early, the crop was 3 weeks late, there's more crop, so we should take the price down, there's less crop, so we should take the price up. There is not a lot of nimbleness to our current supply chain. It's very relationship based, which is great. There's a place for relationship and for ingenuity, but there's also a place for data. And for actionable intelligence and using that information as best you can, so that ultimately we can provide the best fresh produce to our consumers and have consumption go through the roof. That's what we really want. I think my granddaughters need to be eating all berries every day, and we're going to be happy in the fresh produce industry.
Yeah, can I build on what you're mentioning there? There's a place for data, is what I heard you say. And what I really enjoy is getting out into the field, going to the pack houses, and what I learn is they are gathering a lot of data. In a lot of cases, it's being written on a piece of paper. And that's part of what we're trying to do with RightTrack, is digitize their existing workflow. Just put in just as little bit as we can, because we don't want to create, a harder job for these people that are working really hard every single day. But if we can digitize it, get it into a database, then we can support BloomIQ.
Dave, you're welcome to come up to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada in January and walk around outside with your dog anytime that you want.
At minus 20 degrees.
Minus 50.
Sorry. Yeah, just to, I guess, building on those 2 points, we've all had experience, bad experiences Dave has with his granddaughter with produce, right? The lettuce that's black, the avos that's mushy and a little bit like soft. And what we're trying to do then is to make sure that this big problem, 30 to 40% of food waste, we start to make an impact. And part of that is the data and sharing data, but also part of that is actually the challenge of talking to stakeholders, the rest of the actors in the supply chain, and greater willingness to share data for the benefit of the common good. Now, you might say the common good would be, improved margins, less shrink, but it could also be redacted in food waste and food miles. And that's really what we're trying to achieve, having the data sharing and also the stakeholder buy-in to make this happen.
So I'm hearing that on one side, that connection to the consumer is so essential, right? And there's insights that we could derive there to improve the experience, whether it be taste or the experience of freshness with the consumer, but there's some gaps along the way. But in reality, there's sensitive information in these data sets. I want to share my data with anyone, and I want to share it with everyone, and I want to know what you're going to do with it, how it might be used against me. I want to tell you that I'm safe and sustainable and secure, but I don't want downward price pressure by doing so, right? So how do we answer that question instead of, hey, just share all your data, we're going to make your life easier, to how do we make sure that we're not putting our business at risk and we're actually getting the value that we think we should be getting from these insights? It's a tough one.
I had the opportunity to go to the annual general meeting of Berkshire Hathaway, where Buffett and Charlie Munger at the time, this was a few years back, were up on stage, and they put on quite a show, and they talked about the most powerful economic force in the world is trust. Trust is the most powerful economic force, and therefore a lack of trust is the most destructive force in the economy in the world. And when I see the entire supply chain and the trust that we're trying to build with consumers and all the way through. I see these gentlemen who are trying to measure quality, which I think is the holy grail in fresh produce. If we can get great quality out, and I could actually report on that as the BloomIQ terminal that people are referencing, and maybe their producers get a little higher price because they're doing the right things and they're producing the best fruit. That's what I envision as a trusting supply chain that's doing the right things all the way along. And we're in a day and age where you don't have to give away all your information. You don't have to give away all your trade secrets. You can keep what you want to your chest, and you can share the rest with the rest of the supply chain. There's no reason. In fact, I think it's destructive if everybody's just holding their cards close to their vest and nobody's working together. This is an industry that doesn't have a ton of bureaucracy and legal contracts to it. It's relationships, and there is a lot of trust already in the supply chain. So I believe we need to build on that. And I see the tools that are coming up that are so exciting. Ignore them at your peril, because if you don't move on artificial intelligence and some of these new tools that are becoming available, you're just going to get left behind.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're seeing that now, right? But then garbage in, garbage out, right? So we go back to the age-old problem of how do we get quality information into these tools so that we get quality output from those tools.
I'll just add one more thing, Drew. I've got a really smart young CTO sitting in the audience here. He went to university in applied mathematics when he was 12. He's a Googler. And I'm telling you, he doesn't need very many data points to get billions of data points off of it and know exactly what you're doing. So not very much needs to be shared in the supply chain for us to represent, give a pretty good representation of what's going to happen. I just think right there tells everybody that there should be a free flow of data, because it's going to be beneficial to everyone, and it's coming anyways.
All right, well, Carl mentioned data and gold in the same sentence. But how do you achieve that gold from your data? So there's some type of solution that would need to take place if I'm going to share my data with others. I think, David, were you suggesting that we should share it for free?
Well, no, of course, there's opportunities to monetize everything in the supply chain, including your own data. So I think that's important. People will also want to come and say, well, I want to do an enterprise deal with your companies and do something private where I just harvest that data myself. But then there's a broader perspective of the entire industry where we need to know what's happening at a macro level. And that's very non-intrusive into individual businesses when you look at that overarching data that can really help us in a number of ways. We can make better decisions about when crops are going to gap and when they're going to overlap. When should retailers be and food service companies be driving for ads so that we can move the product through the system seamlessly? There's nothing worse than no ads being set up, no promotions being set up, and a flood of product coming on that just jams up the system for a month, and everybody is sitting there struggling, dying. You can have all the tools you want in the world, and it doesn't change the fact that those berries or those tomatoes are sitting in a warehouse for a month rotting. And we throw away 50%, 40%, whatever the number is. There's a lot of incentive to do this. And I think it is starting with supply chain of the future. I mean, there is some real momentum out of this convention that is building around the supply chain of the future, and what Drew and that team have done. And the more people that participate, the more powerful the movement get, and the better the tools get.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it's an amazing team. So it'd be interesting just to hear your thoughts on, like, how does interoperability or harmonized standards kind of create this ideal connection between companies such as Bloom, Delta Track, and Right Track?
From BloomIQ perspective, the current paradigm is that data is very local. Everybody is doing their own thing, collecting their own production data, and really not doing a whole lot with it. Using it maybe internally, but not using it to its maximum potential that they could really extract out of having a disciplined data set. I envision a world where we do have harmonized data across the system. We can do much more with that to bring clarity to the fresh produce market, but also connect in folks like Dave and Carl and what they're doing, so that we can ultimately have BloomIQ is a tool where we plan and then we pivot. We've got some pivoting tools that allow you to make adjustments as the weather changes. I mean, so many things in the fresh produce industry just change along the way. And so to have quality that is assured, that is going all the way through to consumer, there needs to be some reward for that, for the folks that are providing that information. I'm not interested in starting companies that are providing that information. I'm just interested in how do we bring that information to the fresh produce industry so that it can be used in the best possible way. And I think there's just a natural fit for what Dave and what Carl's companies are doing into BloomIQ in the future. It was only our first day yesterday, so we got a little bit of a journey to go here, but that's what we envision.
So David, you mentioned using data to add clarity, and I love that. And it reminds me of this analogy. I'm not sure if it works, but I'll give it a try. I really enjoy watching sports, and I'll watch sports on TV. And the data I'm receiving as I'm watching it on TV, it's narrow. It's the pitcher and the catcher, or it's the person hiking the ball to the quarterback. I don't see the big picture. And I love going to the game, like a soccer game, where I can see the entire field, and there's the ball, there's the ref, but look what's happening way over here. And I think there's something to that in the supply chain. If I'm at this point and I can only see one step forward, one step back, if I could get a bigger picture of it and maybe see those weather conditions that were involved in the growing season that might make a difference for me during my ripening.
Yeah. Cool. So I think we're going to land the plane here a little bit, and I just want to give you all an opportunity to express kind of why are you up on stage as part of supply chain in the future? What are you most excited for when you think about, in 2026, involved in this project, and what would you say to the folks in the audience in terms of their participation?
Okay, well, for me, data is really exciting, and I work with data every day, and just building data pipelines, reliable data pipelines, it's just a lot of fun. But I want people to get value out of these data pipelines that I create, and that's even more exciting. And reduce food waste, yeah, that's fulfilling for me. So that's why I'm here. That's what I hope to see in the supply chain of the future. Ripetrack.ai, go visit it. Our booth is 3331, and I've got the spectrometers and everything right there, and I'd love to give you a demo. So stop by sometime today. Thank you.
Just building on that, I think what we want to do, if we're looking out 12 months from now, Drew, is really come up on stage in those 12 months and show the audience all the success we've had. Now, what we're offering today is not perfect, but we think it's a huge advance on where we were 12 months ago in terms of product quality and in terms of collaboration that's really driving the change. So what I'm hoping for here is that there's people in the audience, coming from a grocery chain or a supplier that say, hey, this is a problem that we've identified. Can we now join the working group? Can we join a pilot and test this out? Because by testing it, we're going to be proving value and hitting some of those metrics. So I'm hoping 12 months from now, we're talking about the success stories.
I'm just going to build a little bit on what Carl said, because we're not perfect, but we've got an incredible industry. fresh fruits and vegetables is just, it has been an amazing place to spend your career. And I've spent 35 years plus now in the industry. And it's a great industry producing products that are absolutely delightful to consumers. And so when you've got such an opportunity and you see the opportunities in some of our imperfections where we can get better, it is inspiring to try and make some changes that will really drive change throughout the entire supply chain. And I think that supply chain of the future has been a great spark to start that initiative.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a lot of fun.
Real quick, I'm an old produce guy, okay? And in the produce industry, for us old guys, our BS meter is way up here. And so when you're trying to have change, it needs to happen in very small wins. If somebody comes to me and says, I want an ERP implementation, oh my God, I'm gonna shoot myself because I've been through 3 in my life and I know what that means and I gotta second my best people and all that stuff. So, small wins along the way, and then the new young people coming into organizations are just thirsting for this. So I think there's a dichotomy there. There's the new produce folks that wanna learn, and embrace technology, and then there's old guys like me that just need to be nudged along the way, and there's ways to do it. You put a $100 bill in front of me, and I'm going to change.
That's good. We have another question in the back, and we got a mic running. All right here, and then we'll go to the back. Okay.
Well, I think Carl hit it on the head when I think the most opportunity comes from logistics, because when there's a lot of change of hands, you're taking it off a reefer, and then there's a lot of variance that happens. So you could do whatever you want at the field, right at the right time, but if it's mishandled anywhere in the logistical chain, you're in trouble, and it completely changes all your findings. And I think I mentioned garbage in, garbage out. What I'd like to know from David is, I work at a wholesale distributor for Melissa's. I'm the director of food safety. And right now, honestly, we don't collect a lot of data. A lot of it's in pen and paper, or it just goes straight into the ERP system. So for you, what would be the most valuable information that I could put onto a spreadsheet where AI is very helpful? Because that's the big buzzword right now. It's AI. So I'd like to know what's more valuable for you in your company as a wholesale distribution center to collect.
We're very focused on the production side of the equation right now. That's what we're trying to provide, because there is a lot of retail data out there that can be collected in a disciplined way. You guys do something very specialized. So what you would do and what you do with your products would be, because they're so special, would be very interesting to us. I don't want to get into the metadata of exactly what, I can take it offline of exactly what we'd like you, if you're offering. We would love to work with companies like Melissa's who do some really special things in fresh produce. But from my perspective, just the willingness to embrace that and embrace artificial intelligence. My son runs a company called Inspired Go, a salad home delivery company, and they've put their entire food safety on AI. And so they can ask any food safety question and an AI bot answers them. Doesn't mean they don't need active food safety, but they can get really quick answers about what the Canadian legislation is versus what the American legislation is, like that.
It's a great question, good example. We have another question in the back.
All right. Good morning. Dan DeGay, Canadian Produce Marketing. Come back to the question. You actually almost asked the question I was going to ask. I'm going to pivot a bit. I don't think this is fundamentally a technology thing. I think it's a business transformation thing. So David, maybe more because you've worked in this world longer, what are the other barriers to transforming this industry? I think fundamentally we're talking about transforming supply chains, transforming the way we use data, optimizing quality. Like, we're basically talking about a fundamental change in the business model using technology. So sometimes the barrier to change is more personal, it's more habits, it's more, just curious what the industry needs to sort of more quickly adopt or quickly, experiment and try and maybe fail but learn? Where does that fit into this equation?
Yeah, good one, Dan. My belief is that harmonized standards and some of the things that we've done work on here sets a foundation for entrepreneurs to be able to take that data and make companies out of it, and whatever that might look like. And entrepreneurial companies are small, like they're startups. They're not the behemoths that are in the industry. And so I think we need to be, as an industry, very open to that entrepreneurial spirit, to new companies coming in and doing pilots with the big guys, because that's what is going to move these types of things along. And there's always, you bring that into a big organization and everybody is just like, I don't want to do that, I'm busy, I want to do my job, I want to optimize. So you really need the spirit of entrepreneurship and change and innovation built within major organizations, and they don't need to do it themselves. They need to look outside to the entrepreneurs that are bringing new ideas at a completely different vantage point than what they're looking at.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that, David. In fact, that was the primary reason for why we put together the Technical Accelerator Program, because there's an impedance mismatch between the startups that are have bright ideas but not necessarily are able to answer enterprise level questions around security, implementation, and change management. So it's like, how do we then tool up the startups to give them the tools to be able to engage with industry, and then provide industry that conduit to the startups and to the new innovators so that they can actually work together. So running pilot programs like what you discussed for next year, we're gonna have a ton of pilots with like recipe or playbooks. Here's how you can incorporate that into your business so that we can start to affect change, because there's a bit of a mismatch between innovation and the established industry players. One sentence to finish us off.
Yeah, Delta Track's all around shelf life prediction. So scan that QR code and find out how fresh your product is. Go and find us on Stand 2030 or speak to me after this event. But I'm happy to collaborate.
Clarity to the chaos at the fresh produce market. We work in a very dynamic industry and we need clarity. We'll be much better with it. Take your cards away from your vest and let's start doing things together.
Okay, data, let's make it actionable. Come check out righttrack.ai and we'll show you how.
Round of applause for you, so please. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.